Thank you very much. I think people have done a bit of work over the lunch break to get this resolution into a format, and we've got it moved and seconded by Councillor Bucks and Councillor Livingston. So I suggest that we debate the resolution, and then I'll put the resolution and then we'll be able to move on. So would anyone like to debate it? Glenn Livingston.
Thank you. Yes. Effectively, what we're beginning to go down the path of, in my view, is a housing plan for Christchurch. And I think that what we see beginning today, and then further down the track when we do consult with the other parts, other values and the priorities for housing in Christchurch. It's actually been said before that the measure of a society is its priority for its poor, and this council has for decades kind of enshrined that principle in its dedication to social housing in Christchurch. What we're looking at leading on from this obviously is a possible restructure of that housing, so in order to enable us to attract the income related rent subsidy, because actually at the end of it all is the provision of warm, dry, good housing for our tenants. You also know that we're looking at affordable housing. Much of that comes from the MB and other data, which indicates that that is the biggest gap in the housing market in Christchurch at the moment, is affordable rentals. We will get to that later on in our consultation with the community. Some may argue whether or not it is the role of a council to take part in social housing, and I think for the rest of in affordable housing in the rest of the country, that argument would probably be a bit hard to get across the line, and I think in ordinary times it would be too. But we're in extraordinary times. Rent has gone up in private rentals by 42% in the last year at least. There's been a loss of 2/3 of private rentals. We know of people living in overcrowded houses. I know of 25 in one house in our suburbs. We know of people sleeping by the beach. Our park rangers see them. Really, the evidence, both measurable and anecdotal, is out there that we actually do have a crisis. And I don't think that word is, and the use of it, is necessarily being that melodramatic. Vicky used it before. A description of a crisis is anything or an issue that affects the community. This is having a profound effect on the community. We haven't even talked about the measurable health outcomes of a lack of adequate affordable housing for our community, but those figures are known as well. The government itself commissioned a report, or had a report in 2013, looking at national infrastructure, and housing itself was actually identified as a significant part of infrastructure. So you'll know the 4 well-beings have gone, although Sarah still talks about them in their recovery strategy. They've been replaced by infrastructure, and this report actually confirms that housing can be seen as a necessary part of infrastructure. So on the weight of that, and with what we are going through in Christchurch, I think once we get to that point that we will see, I think in my view, there is a strong case to pursue the path of acting as a catalyst and a facilitator for affordable housing in Christchurch. These are extraordinary times. I did have an amendment, or actually not an amendment, but an addition. I'm not sure whether you're able to bring that up at this point, Rachel, in the policy on affordable housing. It's okay if you can't find it there. What it is, Paul Cottam and I talked about this in developing the policy on affordable housing, where it contains the principles. The first principle is about housing being a human right, and we had a piece that was going to go in there about as per the United Nations Charter. New Zealand is a signatory to that charter, and my view on this is that actually central and local governments are bound up by that and have an obligation at any time and following a natural disaster to make good on that signature in the charter. My view then, in the total sum of this, is that we must act. We must act for our constituents together with the government. They've already given assent to that in the signing of the accord, and their own report indicates there is a case for housing.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm going to be a bit strict on time.
That's all?
Yeah, thank you.
I've made my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul? Just 3 minutes, thanks.
Look, no one would doubt that housing is really, really important for our community, and there is no doubt that Christchurch City Council is a large provider of housing in the social housing perspective. We're the second largest landowner in New Zealand, which signifies that we are in this in a big way. My concern is the removal of point 4 and the bullet points that follow that. I think as a large provider, we need to look at all options. We know how difficult our financial situation is at the moment, and the last thing I'd want to see happen is burden our ratepayers to any more degree than they already are. So I'm happy to go out, and I understand what Councillor Livingston said. He's almost talking like it's a done deal, but we've got to consult with our community, and we might find a different outcome from that. So I'm supportive of actually going out to the community to go and see how they're thinking. But we also got to be very, very mindful of our ratepayers. So I would like to see those options still left in there. I'm not happy with it in its current form. So I will actually vote against this if that's not actually reinstated in there, because we do need to be prudent and look at all our options.
A point of order, those options are still in there. They were just some that were selected from the options that are identified
So now
in the
all the
staff
10
report.
options, no?
No, I think in other areas that we've done before in past points, we want to make sure they're actually highlighted in the resolution. So I want to see them highlighted in the resolution so they don't get lost or buried in other documentation.
Okay. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks. Just before I do start on that, Pauline's point of order around that option being included, that's not the case. It says the 10 options identified in the staff report. Option 20 in there is selling down part or all of the portfolio, so that's omitted. What it actually speaks to in the staff report is selling it to a community housing provider. So that actually narrows the scope a wee bit. Okay, well, would it be appropriate to include selling down part or all of the portfolio, as was originally there but it's now struck out?
So it's option 15 and 20.
I think option 20 from memory of the staff report. 20.
Anyway, look, the thing is that if people want to have a vote on that going back into the paper, or do, as Paul said, vote against the resolution, so...
I don't think it matters if it's the 20 options identified in the staff report. I think that what we're trying to get to is a statement of proposal that, because they're assessed here, that actually deals with that. So I don't think anybody minds if it's the 20 options, which includes item 15 and 20, which is the one you're thinking.
All right. Well, if you've got all options being considered, then I'm on board.
Well, why don't we take out the word 10 and just say through the options identified in
We'll
the
just say,
staff
yeah,
report?
even just put in all the options.
I mean, they're going to come back to us with the statement of proposal, so, if that, anyway, but Jamie, do you want to...
Okay, well, I'll speak to that then. I was actually going to stand up and speak against voting for this, just purely from what I just mentioned, the point of order before, but I'm actually supportive of it now. So I'll just quickly rewrite my speech on the fly. Look, the reality is housing is an absolute crisis point in Christchurch right now. We're all aware of that. I sat around the board table of CCHL, and I do have some reservations. I've got to be frank with you. As a director of CCHL, you've got to be acting in the best interests of the company. You're bound by the Companies Act. Can I, hand on heart, stand up here and tell my colleagues and community that borrowing to the hilt, slightly under banking covenants in 2019, is acting in the best interests of the company? I don't know if I can, but I need more options around that. Some of my friends in the property game will speak of barracuda and things, and that's really about being nimble and having teeth. And I think as a council, we need to know that we can be nimble and actually make the changes required to get the best outcomes for our community. And I guess my concern around this, which I hope we can find a way forward from, is that I can stand up here and I would love to make a whole lot of promises about what we can achieve as a council for our community, because we're all here to achieve great outcomes for our community and have a better city as a result of that. I can't do that because there's so much unexpected items that will occur. The one thing I can guarantee you is that the unexpected will occur. So if we're absolutely leveraged to the hilt and we don't have that wriggle room to be that barracuda, I guess, when you need to be, then that's going to leave us, I guess, in a pond surrounded by the barracudas. And they do have teeth. And for the community, that's not going to be pleasurable in the slightest. The fact of the matter that we're going to include all the options in the staff report, which is around selling down part or all of the portfolio, is actually a genuine question that needs to be answered. Garbage in ultimately equals garbage out, and that's not what we're here to do. We're here to deliver a great resolution for the community, and for us to be able to do that, we need to have all the information on the table and to consider it. If we're going to hamstring ourselves, we're not going to be able to come up with a good decision. I'm interested in finding a way forward with housing, but it's got to stack up. I'm not going to be shortchanging the community, and I need to find a way that satisfies a good, smart financial return. The final point that I want to make is that I've heard a couple of people saying, questions have been raised, look, is this going to be a safe investment? I think that's the wrong question. Safe investments are a dime a dozen. You know, put money in the bank, that's a safe investment. What I'm interested in as a city councillor or a representative of our community is a smart, financially prudent decision. And a smart, financially prudent decision is about ensuring greater value return than the original capital outlay. So if we have all options on the table and we can find a way forward, and if we're going to generate greater value than the capital outlay in the first instance, hey, I'm in. But we need to have all the options on the table. I see that that's been added in there now, so I'm happy. We're going to be asking a question of the community, and we're not putting blinkers on or hamstringing them. So let's just be upfront and frank, and I reserve my right to see if we progress this once I've seen the numbers, and if we can be that barracuda and be nimble.
Yeah, Phil.
Yes.
Thank you, Leanne. Look, I'm not sure. Recently I watched the film about Abraham Lincoln, and one of the elected representatives at the time said this. He said, I've worked hard for the good of the people without caring for any of them. And I just want you to know that as a former social worker, before I became a city councillor, I'm certainly not going to walk away from our Christchurch City Council's proud history of our policy of caring for some, and especially most of our vulnerable people. And I'm sure our council is not either. But some of the facts around the housing crisis currently are really more than alarming. The Housing Trust people tell me that they have cases of young mothers who are sleeping in cars and babies with them as well. And those young people have nowhere to go. So clearly this is a very serious situation, and we cannot do nothing. And I know council are not saying that. I just want you to know too that I think that much of the focus so far, and why this is so important, is about the rebuild and repair. People have been left out of the equation. And that's happened with EQC, and it's happened with government's focus on the anchor projects. It has not been, unfortunately, about housing for people. This is the beginning of a housing plan, as Glenn said, which actually will have its focus on housing our people. So I want our council to take a progressive view. We can use the levers of local government to resolve our housing problems. The shortages are estimated of houses between 8,000 and 11,000. So creating the housing entity is like a first step that we can take. It's actually a total myth that city housing is costing the ratepayers. It's been self-funding, it's ring-fenced, there's been zero cost. And so with the new housing entity, it gives us a chance to develop a new model. It certainly develops the beginning, and a sensible beginning, of the whole housing plan. And I also want to say, and I think it'll be an excellent investment. When was housing in our city not a good investment? So I actually want to applaud Councillor Vicky Buck and Glenn Livingston and Pauline Cotter for all the work you've done, and I want to thank the staff too.
Thank you. Jimmy Chen?
Thank you. I support this one. The reason is we need to review the housing, no matter affordable housing, social housing. This housing is a primary human need. So any local government, I think, we should bear our responsibility. And also our voice, our name will be concerned about the housing. Second is we can review the moment the environment and the atmosphere. It's extraordinary time. It's not a business as usual. Especially like Vicky this morning, she emphasized right now it's a housing risk. About 11,000 property has been damaged, need to be repaired, or maybe quite a few unrepairable. So how to meet the needs as a local government, especially as the city council? I think we should take a proactive way. This is kind of, if we support this one, it's kind of release a strong signal. We are not ignore or not neglect all those suffering the people. Third one is my personal view. This kind of the recommendation not only the care for the low income people, because if we based on the theories whole, under the 30% the income, the probably eligible, if more than cannot. However, due to the supply and the demand, there's a bigger difference. Actually affect middle class the population, because there's a bigger gap. The supply cannot meet the demand. There's a bigger gap. But if council take proactive way to working together with the government, with the housing the providers, even if we establish this kind of independent kind of a company or entity, but at least can narrow this gap between the demand and the supply, actually benefit to the middle class the people. That's very important, because middle class people actually is the foundation, is the base in keep this society more stable. And also, if we go to the public consultation with the proper draft statement or proposal and the affordable housing policy, actually we can get more feedback from the community, from the wider the ratepayer or from the people. Give us sufficient information, make the proper decision. Not in the initial stage we against. I don't think that's our proper attitude. So that's why I support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Ali and Yanni.
Thank you. Social housing or affordable housing? The question that's been asked, and some of us have considered as well, is whether this is in fact part of a city council's role. Is it a part? Should it be a part of our role? And do the answers to those questions change because of the exceptional circumstances that we're in? And these are things that I have been grappling with myself over the last month or so. No one could disagree that we are in a serious situation in this city, particularly with regards to rentals, and I for one know that, looking for somewhere to live at the moment after being out of our own house for nearly 3 years because of insurance delays, and we are not the only ones. I do think that insurance companies and EQC play a role in this as well, and they need to step up. They are helping to add to this crisis with the delays, and they need to address the part that they are playing in this crisis. Affordable housing is an issue, but I repeat again, is it the role of the City Council to get involved and enter this market, or do we do it because this is an exceptional situation? I will be supporting this so that there is more information on the table to consider, because I think we are in exceptional times and we need to have all of the information to make an informed decision.
Yanni?
Thank you. I will support these recommendations. Actually, this is asking for more work to be done, so this isn't the substantive decision. But I think this is sending a really powerful signal to our community and to our city about us intending to be proactive. Can I say, I think this is great that government have now acknowledged that they do need to intervene in the market. And 20th of April 2012, following a letter I sent in February 2012 to Sarah, the response I got back asking for intervention was that the government intervention in the rental housing market would be minimal. Their response at that time was to leave it to the market, and we've seen what's happened as a result. Rents have gone through the roof, people are stressed and suffering and struggling, and we've got a city that has a housing crisis. So I think it's great that government have now acknowledged, although it is coming, a bit longer than many of us would have liked, that they have an important role to play in the housing market in Christchurch post-earthquake. So it's incredibly critical, I think, that we work with government constructively over the models going forward so that we can get action in place. TPA, the Tenants Protection Association, did a survey in 2013, and there's 3 quotes that they've got in here which I think summarise what's happening in our city. Rent's going up $100 a week. Is that a fair increase? Someone wrote. The second person, I've just received a 90-day notice, but I've always looked after the place and paid my rent. I can't afford the rents now. Where will I go? What will I do? And the third one, I'm scared to ask for anything to be fixed. They might put the rent up again, or worse, they might kick me out for complaining. That is the reality of what tenants in our city are going through. Unfair, exorbitant rent increases that they cannot afford, afraid to ask for basic things to be done to make the houses healthy and livable, and being evicted so that the rent can go up. That's crazy. That's not the sort of city I want to live in, and I'm incredibly proud that this council has a proud tradition of standing up for providing housing as a basic human right. Affordable and accessible housing is a basic human right, and we should be incredibly proactive in that space because the market will not deliver. We have seen a complete and utter market failure to provide affordable housing to our citizens in the greatest time of need that we've ever had. So I believe we have to do something, and I'm totally committed to being proactive and looking creatively at what the solutions are. I welcome getting something out in a few weeks' time where the public can also feed back. We have a history of having a strong social conscience around this council table and in this city, and I think it's incredibly important that we continue to show that we care for the most vulnerable. That is how we will be judged, how we treat those people that are most vulnerable. And I think this is a very good step towards addressing this major issue in our city. So I'm incredibly supportive of us doing it. Can I say finally, it's not just about rezoning. We've tried that as well. One of the other government interventions was to just enable a lot more rezoning of greenfield land. What we know is, actually we've got spare zoning capacity in the city for tens of thousands of extra houses to be built. They're not being built. Again, market failure. It is not about simply rezoning. We have to move to a situation where houses are being built that people can actually live in and deal with the housing crisis we have. And this is part of what we're doing here when we've tried other things that have failed or not delivered. This is part of a new approach, and I strongly support it.